So in this lesson we'll be seeing what a turnaround is in music and 5 important variations, I would say the most common variations that you can find to a turnaround. Let's get started saying that a turnaround is a specific chord progression which is 1, 6, 2, 5 in a major key. So to keep things as simple as possible, we are going to see this in the key of C major. So the 1 chord is going to be the C major 7. The 6th chord is going to be the A minor 7. The 2 chord is going to be the D minor 7. And the 5 is going to be a G7. Now guys, it's not important what positions you choose for this exercise, for this turnaround. It's just important that you know what chords we are going to play, and then it's completely up to you to figure out what's your favorite position for them, or in general what is the best way of playing them. So I will get started again playing the whole turnaround so that we can hear the way the tension builds up between the chords before releasing again when we come back on the first degree, on the C major 7. So it basically sounds like this. Alright, so let's go through the variations now that we can apply to this. We'll be mainly work towards substitutions like the tritone substitution, the secondary dominant substitution, and also the secondary diminished 7th chords. These are all topics that I talked about in previous videos, so if you're not familiar with some of them and you'd like to go deeper on some, please feel free to check out my other videos on this channel. So, the first variation that we're going to apply, the first substitution, is going to be on the 6th chord. So after the C major 7 first chord, we go to the 6th, but rather than playing an A minor 7, we're going to make it dominant. We're going to make an A7, possibly an A7 with a flat 13. Like this one. Now, this is because we think about the A as the secondary dominant of the D minor 7 we are going to. So we prepare a mini 5-1 minor, right? Going from A7 to D minor 7. So A7 is the 5 of D minor 7. And since we are going to a 1, a fake 1, which is a D minor 7, which is going to be a minor chord, we want to make the dominant 7 chord, the 5, altered using the flat 13, which is going to be the same note, the F, which you find on top on the D minor 7 as well. So if we apply this variation without changing the other chords, this is going to be Alright, so literally I just changed the A minor 7 into an A7 flat 13. On the G I'm playing a G13 right now, so I'm adding one of the extensions into the G7, but again, feel free to play any position, even just a basic G7 or just a 3-note G7 without the 5th, that's absolutely fine. Now, the second variation we are going through is very similar. It still considers the A7 as the second chord in the progression, but this time, rather than adding the flat 13, we are going to add the flat 9 and remove the root note. Now, this process brings us to a C sharp diminished 7th. Now, the C sharp diminished 7th is just the upper part of an A7 flat 9. So if you look at an A7 flat 9 and you remove the A from it, so the root note, you find a chord which is C sharp diminished 7th, this one. Okay, now the benefit of this is creating a sort of chromatism, a walking bass line between the 1 and the 2. So between the C major 7 and the D minor 7, we pass through a C sharp diminished 7th. And the function, again, is still the same, to create a tension like the secondary dominant we were playing before, to reach the D minor 7. So if we play now the turnaround with the C sharp diminished 7th, it's going to be sounds lovely. You can hear the build up of the tension and then the release when we come back to the C major 7. Now, the third variation that we are going through replaces the first chord, the 1, so the C major 7, with the 3 in the same key, the E minus 7. Now, why do we do this? First of all, because C major 7 and E minus 7, so the 1 and the 3 in the C major key, they belong to the same family of chords. And together with this, we can also notice that the E minus 7, if you add a C on the bass, becomes a C major 9. So I don't know if you ever played like a C major 9 like this. If you look at it, you are basically playing an E minus 7 with a C on the bass. Okay, so if you play that on the piano, it's probably even easier. You can play on the right hand a E minus 7, on the left hand you put a C on the bass, and you get basically a C major 9. So you can imagine that the E minus 7 sounds good every time you're supposed to play a C major 7. So this applies to any key, obviously, so you can always replace the 1 chord with the 3. The effect is basically creating a 2-5-2-5 with a 1 whole step of distance. This is because the C major 7 is now replaced with the E minus 7. We can leave the A7 flat 13 that we were using before to create the tension, basically the secondary dominant, to go to the 2, which is the D minus 7, and then still use our G7 to finish our turnaround before resolving on C major 7. So if we listen to it all together, it basically sounds like... Alright, so this is the third variation using the E minus 7, the 3 chord, to replace the 1. Now, for our fourth variation, we are going through all dominant 7 chords. So we are basically creating a cycle of dominant 7 chords. We start from the E minus 7 that we were using before to replace the 1, so the 3 in the key, and we make it dominant 7 so that in this way we can create the secondary dominant of the A7. The A7 was itself a secondary dominant of the 2, the D minus 7, so the 5 of the 2. We are going there using its secondary dominant E7. So far we have E7, A7 going to D minus 7. But following the same logic, we can now make the D minus 7 a D7, maybe alter it, is completely up to you that, to go to G, because the distance between D and G makes sure that D can also be treated as a dominant chord, a secondary dominant of G7. And G7 is the primary dominant, is the dominant of the key, which resolves to G. So using these 4 dominant 7 chords, we make the chord progression, the turnaround, sound like... Okay, very interesting and very different from the one we started from. I was playing this with all forms, all shapes with 1-3-7, so that we can hear better the movement in between the chords, but feel free to add extensions, alterations, it's completely up to you. Now, for the fifth and last variation into our list, we are going through a chromatism. So we are going to create a double chromatism, which leads us to play all dominant 7 chord again, but this time using not only secondary dominants, but also triton substitutions. So that means I will still have my E7 to start from. I will go to A7, but I replace the A7 with its triton substitution, which is going to be E flat 7. The distance between A7 and E flat 7 is 1 triton, 3 tones, and they are both dominant 7 chords, so I can replace them. In this way, I will play E7 and then immediately E flat 7. Then I continue with my progression where we were before with the D7 that we made dominant to go to G7, but we don't go to G7. We replace the G7 with its triton substitution, which is going to be D flat 7, and therefore I create a chromatism which resolves into our C major 7. So I can start from E7 and get this walking bass line, all chromatic, E, E flat, D, D flat, C. So I reach the C major 7 going through E7, E flat 7, D7, D flat flat 7, and finally our C major 7. All right. Now, these are the 5 most common variations that I believe are more likely to happen to you when you start studying jazz standards, but not only that, you find it in very different genres. So just feel free to mess around with them, mix it up, like mix the different variations that we saw together, the different substitutions, replace some chords and have fun with them in different keys. The whole point is make sure that you can find your own chord shapes to feel comfortable when you play these variations using the secondary dominants, the tritone substitutions, if you like it even the secondary diminished 7 chords, cadences like 2-5 minor or 2-5 major here and there to make sure that your turnaround sounds a little bit more spicy, a little bit more jazzy. Okay, I hope all this makes sense. If you guys have any questions about anything I said in this video or any other variations that you'd like to share with me, please feel free to get in touch, comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, the notification bell to make sure that you get a little notification every time I release my new videos so you don't miss any other video like this one. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. So thanks again, this was the Guitarist, see you next week.